next we have gifted, instead of the district gifted. And who's going to discuss that?
That's right.
For dyslexics.
That's right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Stephanie Gardner. I'm the district specialist for Gifted. And there were a couple different things I was asked to gather data on. The first are the service delivery models that we use throughout the county at each of our schools. And I started with the elementary level. The first slide shows you all of our elementary schools that continue to use a one-day-a-week pull-out model. And I've given you how many students are currently eligible and participating in those schools and the teachers that are servicing those schools. One of the reasons I included the teachers is because last year we had one teacher working with up to 4 different elementary schools last year, and with the addition of another unit, we're down to having teachers servicing up to no more than 2 schools. So Central Ridge, Citrus Springs, Crystal River, Forest Ridge, Hernando, Pleasant Grove, and Rock Crusher are also utilizing a one-day-a-week pull-out model. Laurel City Elementary, for the first time, is having services available to them at their school site. They're using the Renzulli Learning Program, which is a web-based program to help facilitate instruction to their students. And while the rest of their students are working on Success Maker to remediate skills or to help their average ability students prepare for the FCAT, their high ability learners are working on Renzulli as enrichment. They're using the program to help engage in independent study projects. They have the ability to use this program in the Success Maker lab in their general education classrooms, and there's also the ability to access it from home. There's a parent component as well. And in addition, they spend one day a week with their teacher of the gifted.
There's only 8 students in Full City and they have one full-time teacher there?
There are 8 students, and they have an ESE teacher that splits their time, half with ESE and half with gifted.
Okay.
Homosassa Elementary. On Thursdays, their teacher of the gifted is running enrichment groups, so it's gifted and high ability learners. Each grade level has 30 minutes with the teacher, and they're working on different skills to help enrich for the gifted students, the skills that they already have in place, but also their high ability learner skills that might help them prepare for the gifted program if they were to be found eligible. So critical thinking, brain teasers, logic puzzles. On Fridays, she works with strictly the students that have been identified as gifted, and they also use the Renzulli program. Inverness Primary School has multi-age gifted classrooms. This year they've also included some high achieving students. They have 2 gifted endorsed teachers and a 3rd that's in the process of receiving her endorsement. Their 5th grade students work in those classrooms for their reading instruction, and then the rest of the day they go out with the other 5th graders and change classes for science, social studies, and math.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
You have endorsed here and we used here certified. Has something changed where you go, it used to be certification, now we're doing endorsement?
We in our district are offering an online K-12 endorsement program, so they can add that endorsement to their certificate if they don't already have it.
And so you don't have to get gifted certified, you can get endorsed.
Correct.
To do it, how many hours involved in endorsement?
It's 60 hours, a module, there's 5 modules in all, so it's 300 hours.
So about the same amount as in certification. Okay. I think so.
It is.
It's just-
It's about the same amount of hours. At IPS, for their kindergarten and 1st grade students, they schedule them on a case-by-case basis. When they're identified, if they're able, they will take those students and put them into their multi-age classrooms. If, because of their age or their social emotional development, if they're not ready to make that shift, then they will schedule them on a resource basis. If they're high readers, they'll put them in their room for the reading instruction. If they're high math students, they'll put them in there just for math. Another thing that they do is they have what they're calling a gifted studies class with their teacher of the gifted. And she meets with them one day a week, and she explores the social emotional aspects of being gifted with them until 2nd grade when they move into that full-time gifted program.
Let me ask one more time.
No,
Is there
you're
a
fine.
discussion between, say, IB teachers and gifted teachers? Because I know Pat brought up the idea about the model, that, you know, the IB model is a terrific model. Have the gifted teachers had the chance to talk about IB, or, and if they haven't, perhaps they could, do you think you could schedule a time for them to go over the thoughts about how learning takes place
I
and the
haven't
delivery?
facilitated that conversation. I would imagine the middle school teachers have had that conversation. I can check with them, and if not, I would be more than happy to set that
That
up.
would be great. Thank you.
Lecanto Primary School is doing something a little bit different with their students. They've been putting together gifted high achieving classrooms at different grade levels. Right now, 2nd and 5th grade are the only grade levels that they do not group as a homeroom, gifted high achieving. They also have a number of teachers that have been working on their gifted endorsement. So when you look at the different grade levels, you can see some of them are working with a homeroom teacher that has their gifted endorsement or is in the process of receiving that endorsement. They also have pull-out services available. If their teacher for their homeroom does not have the gifted endorsement, they receive 1 full day of pull-out services with the teacher of the gifted. If their homeroom teacher does have the endorsement, then they receive a half day of pull-out services with the teacher of the gifted assigned to that school. They also have 5th grade students going over to the middle school for advanced math instruction. And that brings us to the middle schools. At Citrus Springs Middle School, they have 66 students participating in the gifted program, and their course this year is reading, so it's a core content area program. At Chris River Middle School, they have 48 students participating in middle junior research, so for them, gifted is an elective. At Inverness Middle, they have 95 students participating in advanced academics. Again, that would be an elective for those students. And at Lecanto Middle, they have a couple different things happening. They have 66 students participating in a social studies course, so a core content area class, and she also has 10 students participating in video production. At the high school, we have 128 students identified at Citrus High, and again, they're offering a variety of gifted courses: gifted studies, research methodology, externships. They also have students participating in AP and dual enrollment courses. At Chris River High School, we have 100 students identified. They offer gifted courses, however, they didn't have students choose to enroll in them, so they have gifted students participating in AP and dual enrollment as well. At Lecanto High, we have 181 students identified as gifted. This year, they did not offer gifted courses. Their students are participating in AP, IB, and dual enrollment as well.
Is the same gifted teacher for all 3?
No. At Citrus High, we have Steve Harper. Crystal River High, right now they have Sam Evans, who's working towards his gifted endorsement. And at Lecanto High, we have Mr. Etheridge.
So if they're not doing gifted at Lecanto High School, what is Mr. Guthridge doing?
He's teaching general education courses right now, and that's conversations that we're having with the school to determine if there is a need to offer gifted courses to the students there. The second request was to consolidate the data on the parent and student surveys that we sent out to our families of students that were gifted. The first set is the parent survey responses. The first few slides look at where those responses were coming from. As far as the parent responses, we had about 150 parents respond. And you can see for the elementary schools where the majority were coming from. IPPS had the majority of the responses. And again, looking at the students that are eligible for the program at those schools. And at the middle schools, the majority of our responses came from IMS. And breaking it down by grade level, the majority of the parent responses were from 5th graders and also 7th graders. So we asked them 3 different questions. What do you like the most about REACH? What would you change about REACH? And if your child is no longer participating, why is that? So for the first question, the parents, for the most part, said they like the challenge that's provided to their students and also the time that their students get to spend with like peers. There was also a variety of other responses. They like the hands-on activities their students engage in. Some of them did say they were unhappy. They like the full-time program, so for the most part, those responses came from families at IPS. They like their teachers. There was some non-specific praise, just things very general, like I like REACH. They like practical life skills that their students are being exposed to, and they also like the time that their students spend in REACH. What would they change? 21% said they wouldn't change a thing. 21% said they would change the curriculum. Consistency with curriculum, the amount of rigor in the curriculum, things like that. 19% said that they would like more time in REACH or services provided at all of the schools, and that's something that we have addressed. All of our schools have services being provided on their school sites, and one is being bused this year. Some other changes that were mentioned: lack of communication. That was primarily an elementary issue, and that's been resolved. Parents wanted core content area classes, not gifted as an elective. More classes at the secondary level. There were issues with schedules. 4% were unsure what they would change. Some parents felt like their students' goals were not being met. Catch up in homeroom, that's primarily an elementary issue when their students are missing one full day of instruction to participate in REACH. They want a class period a day, not a full day of instruction, again, missing one full day to go to that REACH class. Some of them don't like that gifted classes are canceled when their teacher is out. Some parents were upset with teacher-student ratios, and some parents just don't like their teacher. And if their child is no longer participating, what would they change? 55% said it was not applicable. Their children are still participating. 15% said their child no longer participates because of the teacher. 9% said they're not interested. There's no benefit of the gifted program in high school. And 6% are no longer participating because they've chosen to participate in IB or AP courses. And some other comments included class size. They didn't like the subject area that gifted was being offered. 3% felt like there were no options at the high school. No follow through by the school, or they're participating in online programs through another county. That brings us to our student survey results. And we had about the same number of students respond. 159 students responded to their questions. Again, IPS had the largest student response at the elementary level. And this time, LeCanto Middle had the largest response at the secondary level. And when we look at the grade levels, 7th and 8th grade were the highest responders. We asked them the same 3 questions. What do you like? What would you change? And if you're no longer participating, why? What they like about REACH are the projects that they get to participate in. They like the challenge that they're provided, and also the time they get to spend with their like peers. Some of their other likes were the problem-solving activities, the advanced content. They like their teachers. They like the acceptance that they get. There was some non-specific praise. They also like diversity, technology, games, and freedom that they feel. Some things that they would change: 32% said that they would not change a thing about their program. 16% would like more time in REACH. They would like class content or activity changes, more hands-on activities. And some other comments included schedule. 4% were unsure. 3% mentioned expectations that others have of them, and those comments were things like realizing that just because they're gifted, they're not gifted everything. They want more accessibility in high school, changes with class size, changes in teacher. They'd like to have substitutes instead of having their classes canceled. More recognition of REACH. They want their peers changed. I don't know if I can do anything about that one. They want more options, field trips, and we had one comment: they want changes in initial evaluation and eligibility determinations.
Does that mean they want more kids in there or less kids in there?
That one comment was specific to a friend that was tested and didn't make
You
it.
know, my kids always thought it was like a social club you apply to when you get in.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And if they're no longer participating, why? 65% said it was not applicable to them. 11% of the students said they were not participating because the high school didn't have REACH. 4% said they couldn't afford a bad grade. 4% said they were participating in band or IB instead of REACH. 4% said they didn't participate because of their teacher. There wasn't a challenge. They didn't like the activities. And we had students say that they just wanted to be a normal student. So that brings us to next steps. Some of the things that we're looking to continue with our gifted program is to continue offering Camp Invention as a summer STEM-based program for our elementary students. That goes towards supporting the hands-on project-based learning that our students are telling us that they enjoy and the parents are telling us that they enjoy. The first year we offered this program, we had 30 students participate, and we had a lot of parent response to that. Last year we had 70 students participate, and this year we hope to continue that. We have our middle and high school gifted students come back and participate as camp counselors. They earn community service hours for doing so. We want to continue adding advanced course options in the middle schools. We have advanced math and science right now. Next year we're looking at adding language arts. As I mentioned before, we're determining if there's a need to offer more gifted options at Lecanto High School. We want to continue gathering feedback from our parents and students with additional follow-up surveys, and continue to provide online K-12 gifted add-on endorsement program to our teachers at no cost to the participants. Right now we have 6 new teachers of the gifted in our district who are participating in the modules, but we have overall 21 teachers enrolled and participating. So for the most part, we have lots of teachers that are involved just for the knowledge of how to work with these students.
That's great. And again, I see the students helping other students, and that's a very good model. And they don't have to, it's not like in the classroom, they're pulled aside and said, hey, work with these kids. It's the summer, so they want to do it.
Right.
You pausing for questions, or?
Yes. Any
Okay.
questions?
I have just a couple things. I mean, I know we have it at all levels, but one of the questions is that I have always that goes through my head is the alignment of programs, and particularly at the secondary or the middle school level. One school we have it as an extracurricular activity. Another school, it's a subject area. If I'm gifted, I may not be gifted in that subject area. And while I know accommodations can be made, again, the alignment of programs, we kind of do different things at different schools. Have we looked at aligning programs so that we are more consistent? And I know at the elementary, we, again, Floral City and Homosassa, because obviously the size of their facility makes it a little more challenging, but somewhat it's aligned to everyone other than maybe IPS. I mean, IPS and Lecanto seem to be the only ones that are doing a little bit different models. The other ones all seem variations of that same model. But again, at the middle school, there's nothing, it seems like, that's generally consistent.
A lot of what happens at the middle schools first depends on the teacher certification. The gifted is added on as an endorsement for the most part. And so when they offer gifted courses, they have to look at what that endorsed teacher is certified to teach. Offering it as an elective, what comes up for many of the students is now they're limited to what they can take. If they want to participate in band, now they have to choose, do I want to participate in gifted or do I want to participate in band? So there's a lot of questions that the administrators at the middle schools have to deal with in trying to meet the needs of their students. If they make it a core content area class, the issue, as you said, comes up. What if my student's not gifted in that area?
You know, a question that I keep going because you know acceleration is something that's been a little bit of a passion of mine. And I see that we talk continually adding advanced course options in middle school, but the elementary school piece always comes in. Now I know you're going to talk about, I think, 759 here in a second, but part of me now with the amount of options that we have is that I go and ask the big question, what is the end result? What is the end result that we want for our students, and how are we developing that backwards? And so I ask the question, Gifted right now, or REACH, is a program, as much as it is an identifier, but should it instead be a plan for the student? You know, we take ESE, and ESE is not just We don't just have all kids in one ESE class, and that's the option that we provide them. And with REACH in the past, our model has been pretty much that. At the high school, what we've recognized is it looks very different at the high school because it means, you know, the Art Academy for some kids, if that's their giftedness. It's AP dual enrollment for another one. It's acceleration. It's a blend of programs. And I'm not sure that that model doesn't necessarily work going backwards. So I go back to, is REACH a program, or maybe should it be a plan?
I think what we're finding more and more now at the elementary level is we've been talking with administrators about thinking outside of the box when they're providing their services, being more creative with the way that they use their staff, especially staff that has an interest and is pursuing that gifted endorsement. We have clearly elementary schools that are trying to break away from that one-day-a-week program and are trying to gear their service delivery model to better meeting the needs of their students, whether it be gifting or grouping gifted and high ability learners throughout the course of the day so that all of their academic areas can be better addressed, or something like the Renzulli learning model, where they can more precisely zero in on specific interests and strengths and design programs that are more individualized, like we do with our ESE students. It really comes down to the resources that are available at the schools, the number of students that they have to serve, the staff that they have available with the knowledge base to provide those services.
Because the one thing that sticks out is when asked about what would you change, it was pretty much, 20% said as parents that they would change the curriculum. Only 20% said or 21% said they'd keep it the same. So it clearly is something the parents, I think, are also seeing. I know the survey was not a complete high response rate, but I did think it gave a glimpse into, are our programs working, are they achieving? Because those that we have put on acceleration paths have been individual, plans for that student, kind of targeting their giftedness.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that we're really, I think we're doing it symptomatically as opposed to, systematically.
I think one of the issues is you're looking at giftedness and acceleration as a subject-based issue, rather than giftedness being looked at from how do we help students develop their own personal interests, regardless of what subject they're in, and learn research techniques and higher level thinking skills, and using those in new ways, regardless of what the subject is. Especially in elementary school, it's not subject oriented. And in middle school, I think it's just a way to provide those programs. I remember when my older son was in English, the whole English class wasn't about reading, it was about doing projects using literature. So whether or not you were a student who understood literature deeply, or you were a student who excelled in math, you went through that thinking and going deep, not wide, on a project. And I think that's always been the goal, at least in our county, of how we approach gifted education. Not as an acceleration model, but in developing those gifted skills, which is a little different, because then you can apply those to any curriculum. I think sometimes they get too curriculum based though, and it gets a little stagnant. And I think over time, I've heard about work papers and regular classroom work, which is not within the realm of how gifted education should be delivered. So that may just be a training and expectations issue and monitoring issue.
It's easier to make it a subject-based course and say, oh, now we'll put them all in social studies. Much more difficult to do with that talking about it's a systemic situation. If a student is gifted, it's something internal, and you have to seek out the direction for that giftedness. You can't just put on math, science, or social studies. I know who he is and what he needs to do and how he needs to serve his giftedness. So much more involved.
Yes, I think it's always a struggle to find the balance between meeting their academic needs and then their needs as a gifted learner, the social emotional things that they have to work through. So,
And doesn't a gifted teacher work as a resource teacher for the mainstream classroom in extending those lessons for those children who need that more acceleration? So for instance, if you had a third grader who was, doing free algebra, that gifted teacher would help find that classroom teacher some resources or some ways to engage that student in math at a higher level?
more and more with the move towards the RTI framework, that's something that we've been encouraging our teachers of the gifted to do, and we've been providing them training to help them be a resource to their school problem-solving teams.
Okay. Are we looking at students as far as moving them up to level 4s and 5s? Is that part of the goals of the gifted program?
We monitor their FCAT data every year, and overall, that's where our students are achieving is level 4 and 5.
Because we don't hear about those goals so much, and we know that the 4s and 5s are just as important as the 1s and 2s, but we, because they're up there, we don't pay a lot of attention to them, so I'm glad to know somebody is.
Yes.
I know you're going to go, but 7059 is really going to change, I think, our model that's been required. And that's, and I don't disagree with you, Pat, as far as that, the way the class has been and how that depth that goes into it. But this 7059 is going to change some of, I think, that approach, or forces.
Which is going to be parents who are going to take the position that my student needs to go to the next grade level or take the next class to be challenged.
Right.
It's more parent-driven, isn't it?
It's very, I think, parent-driven.
Very parent-driven. And again, I think a lot of that goes back to our responsibility in making sure that everybody's really informed and educated about what the goals are. I mean, we usually do a really good job, then we didn't do any, and I think we're back to probably doing a good job again as far as keeping parents engaged.
And you notice with the IB program, parent engagement is one of the top issues there. The parents were engaged.
I'm going to say this publicly, probably not a great thing to say publicly, but my older son told me one year they switched teachers, and he says, Mom, he said, you need to have a teacher who's of the gifted to be gifted, for them to understand what we're like. I would say the same thing about people who write laws. If they're going to write laws that are going to dictate and mandate what happens to students' experiences in school, they should probably be of the level that they understand what those are, and those ramifications and implications for those kids and for those schools. And the Senate bill, House Bill Senate 7059, really obliterates what the goals are in our school system for our kids. So we need more gifted legislators.
Without.
Are you suggesting testing?
Now there's an idea.
I'd have Mr. Bittner to give the test.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Thanks
you.
very much. Oh, Nancy, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Because that's your arena too.
I think she covered it beautifully. We have been advertising for the next upcoming gifted module for teachers who really would like to learn more about how to best serve those students. In November, we're beginning the Nature and Needs module again, and we're advertising that widely to get as many people enrolled. And even if that's the only module they take, that they get that foundational understanding of meeting the needs of those students in their classes.
And Nancy, with learning that, with the students you teach that are non-gifted, I think you are able to do a better job.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The next slide is House Bill 7059, and now we're talking about that acceleration piece for those students that are part of the accelerated model. Wanted to kind of give you an update on that. I did send you out a copy of the DOE technical assistance paper. I believe it was 25 pages in length. We actually, and I'm going to jump down to the third bullet, a group of us pulled together in Ed Services, Carol Maynard, Ms. Haynes, Mr. Simon, myself, and Ms. Nobles, and we talked about the impact of that technical assistance paper. It was very quick that we started to gravitate towards the work that had been done in our district last year that Mr. Thomas Kennedy was part of, and that was the acceleration guidelines. I can give you copies of the acceleration guidelines, but I want you to know that we are actually seeing a lot of similarities between the acceleration guidelines that were actually identified last year prior to 7059. And so our plan in mid-services and what we had done is to meet with principals. We wanted a sense of current reality as to what was actually going on at the schools in regards to acceleration. And I believe that what we look at is our starting point for both parent and principal. So Ms. Deutschman said before about 7059 being parent. It's a combination of principal and parent recommendations for their acceleration options that are provided. And there's dimensions, I think if you recall from the technical assistance, compacting, telescoping, mid-year promotion, whole year promotions, and things like that. We wanted to, we feel at the start of that is the school's problem-solving team. And that consists of guidance counselors, core teachers, definitely administration, psychologists that sit on that group, and actually do a review just as they normally would to be able to meet the needs of those students. So in our conversations on September 18th, Ms. Maynard had met with elementary, I met with the middle, and Ms. Nobles had met with the high school. We developed a sense of understanding of how the schools are actually identifying their students that are being accelerated, and then what are some of the processes and procedures that they have in place. The next part is that we feel it's important to bring the acceleration committee back together to reconvene, to be able to kind of strengthen up the acceleration guidelines that'll be more specific as it relates to House Bill 7059. So right now we're meeting tomorrow in order to be able to identify a date to bring that group together. Mr. Kennedy had sat on that, and then some folks from Ed Services, and we had a representative from the elementary. We did start out with the middle, and we're going to strengthen the high school participation in that conversation. So our timeline is that we'd like to try and get a meeting set here before, definitely tomorrow, but in October, so that way we can then get that group together and really do an analysis that we did in the Ed Services Department of the two documents, of the technical assistance and the acceleration guidelines, to be able to kind of spell out some of the things that were missing in the acceleration guidelines that we would address from the House Bill 7059.
Mark, would that need to be a, moving it from a guidelines to a policy?
You know, we kind of talked about that a little bit.
And I'm not saying that I'm saying we should, I didn't know if we were.
I think my response to that is that eventually the policy is going to be our student progression plan.
Okay.
We will have this built into our student progression plan, which will actually then revert back, such as policy reverts to our guidelines. So we had a conversation about that. Mrs. Maynard oversees the student progression process, is that we would identify those key points in the student progression plan and then allude to our guidelines in place and then share those with the board when they are finished. Okay? So,
one of the things too, and maybe this is part of the process, was, and we talked about this when we were developing the guidelines, is having schools be aware of the menu of options that they have. Because I know even when we came together, there was like, oh, you're doing that? Oh, I didn't know we could do that, or I didn't know that was available. And I know that, again, I have so much appreciation, Ms. Gardner, who really started this, putting this together, and I really think we were a whole lot better, our district, prepared for 759, because I think largely in spirit, that is what we were moving towards. That's what we were trying to provide, those tools at the school site area. So I think in a lot of ways I know this is still complex, but I think we're in a whole lot better shape than I'm sure some of our sister districts are.
we quickly realized that as we were going through it. We had seen the technical assistance paper, and that work that had been done by that committee was really on top of a lot of things. As a matter of fact, common vocabulary for some of those programs that I just mentioned. I've kind of alluded to this with you in the past, but you're right, networking with other schools, networking with other principals in order to be able to see what they're doing. I just want you to know that goes on very regularly in our meetings. We just actually, in our principals meetings, it's really more focused in on more of the curriculum side, and those conversations and breakout sessions are actually taking place with all of our levels. But one of the things that we kind of mentioned at the last one, and I can send this to you, this is the PowerPoint that Ed Services actually developed in order to be able to provide parents with some insight as to some consistency, to provide some consistency throughout the district in regards to the programs that we have. So again, it's about 35 slides, but I wanted to kind of, and I will share this with you and post this on the internet. We did, it's been going on. I think Crystal River Middle School had their curriculum parent night. I was at Central Ridge the other night and they had theirs. The format is this. We're actually talking to parents about the curriculum areas, the transition to the the next generation Sunshine State Standards to the Common Core, and that is our movement to our curriculum. Then we talk about promotion and graduation requirements so that there'll be an understanding of elementary parents as to what's going to be in the forefront as far as middle school and high school. Not to scare, but to basically provide some insight and awareness to those things. The next part is the standards and assessments that are taken at all level, and as part of the instruction, we have 2 slides that relate to elementary, middle, and high school in regards to what are those acceleration options that are available in their schools, and then what are some interventions that are required for to assist students. So I'm gonna share this with you. I'm gonna mail this out to you so that way you will have a copy of this. You will see, again, I don't want to go through every one of it, but it kind of alludes to what we're talking about, is informing parents about these more rigorous standards for graduation, 3rd grade promotion, RTI, middle school, all of those, and then we start to talk about the acceleration options. Okay?
I wondered why the elementary schools were talking about high school graduations requirements.
Yeah, actually, Simon posted it, how to get through high school at the elementary. It's very.
I'm kind of sad about that because I think that's one of the areas that we would like to see some changes in. And you know, it's almost like
Changes in what, ma'am?
in
Graduation.
graduation requirements for all.
I understand, but what we're basically
I know,
doing,
we have obligations.
yeah, that's what we're basically sharing with the parents is what's required as of right now. And I say, and I hope we preface this by saying, you know, Senate Bill 4 was a big impact in our world as far as graduation requirements. By the time their children are 9th graders, it may be totally different, but we wanted them to be aware of this.
Okay. At least you're telling them that part. Don't get too excited by anything because it changes.
Our goal is for them to get to high school.
I think what little feedback we've gotten from that is the parents are pretty appreciative to be made aware of that, even at the younger grades. And
Are they frightened by it?
I think it's,
No, they were very well received. They, again, that understanding. We talk a lot about end of course exams. We talked about the 7th grade requirements because that's right there, very clear about that. So I think it's more of an understanding of what the curriculum that's actually consists of at the middle school and the high school levels, and how those 24 credits are actually laid out.
And it's got to begin with the end in mind, if you want to know where you're going.
Okay.
I mean, this is an odd question. You know, if you enter college and you enter under a certain catalog, and this is what's required of you, all these things cannot be changed. You know, you're going, if you have to take 4 English courses or whatever, you don't, now if they change it to 8 English courses, you don't have to take it because you entered under that catalog. But in the public school system, all bets are off. Is that correct?
Well, I'm gonna, if I don't answer your question, I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Nobles, but Ms. Nobles actually attends a state university system meeting in which they actually are updating the district in regards to what are those requirements for college to get into. So there's that understanding that those two, us in the public school K-12 world, coinciding and then maintaining that what's going to happen at the college level.
Okay.
But you're also talking about, remember, we often talk about cohorts of students coming into high school.
Right.
And so those cohorts don't change, their requirements don't change, typically. I have to say typically, because the 30% for US history is something that they kind of put in that wasn't cohort related. But for example, just like Ms. Deutschman was saying earlier, the requirement for chemistry and physics doesn't begin until next year's 9th graders come in, and then that requirement goes all the way through. They didn't just put that for everybody who was in high school, whether you were a senior or a freshman. It's per group. In other words, per catalog, if we had such a thing.
Okay, well, that's good to know, then, because you might have 28-year-old seniors.
Yes.
Keep changing. Okay.
Wanted to share with you information. We're moving on to another topic, and that is the professional development review that we were engaged in last year. Now, I just kind of wanted to share with you is that typically every 3 years, the Department of Education will come and to basically audit our professional development that we provide in Citrus County schools. So just kind of the first slide just kind of does an overview of that review process. It occurs every 3 years. It's actually a review that's being held at 3 levels. We have a group that comes in and discusses and talks with us at the district level as far as our professional development, the school level, and the educator. We actually had 4 reviewers come to our to our district on February 6th, and they basically spent the week with us, and some were meeting with the district folks, some were meeting with the schools, and actually to the interviews with the educators. At the school levels, they had pre-identified 3 schools that they were going to be meeting with. Central Ridge Elementary, Crystal River Middle School, and Lecanto High School were the schools that were targeted for their review. Their review is based on, or the performance ratings are 4, and they are in the 1, which is the unacceptable area. A score of a 2 is marginal, a score of 3 is good, and a score of 4 is excellent. There is also a component of the standards, and these are the professional development protocol standards that have now been implemented and that we are basically reviewed on. 3.1.6 addresses leadership development specific, in other words, how we are actually developing our leaders of tomorrow. And there are 3 domains that are actually reviewed: a curriculum development, candidate performance and continuous improvement. There are 30 areas that we are rated on, and we received a 4.0 for every one of those 30 areas in regards to preparing leaders. The next bullet on this slide, and the last one, is the overall mean
Excellent,
average.
they used to excellent on all of them.
Yes, and
Excellent.
thank you, appreciate that. The overall mean average, as designated by the state of Florida, of a 3.5 is exemplary. Our score for our district on all of the protocol standards was a 3.9. Now, I'm not, oh, sorry.
Why did you not get a 4.0?
Well, that's what I'm going to kind of talk about,
Okay.
Mr. Thomas. Mr. Kennedy?
We are high performing.
I understand that, and that's why this, I think, is going to bring everything into perspective, because you know how much, I'm sorry, Ms. Bryant?
I just got a quick question. Who chose the 3 schools? Did they pick them?
They actually picked them, we do
All right.
not. And I think that Ms. Grimm found out about those schools probably 2 weeks or a week prior to the date of when they came.
Wow,
So,
okay, thank you.
Who were they, where'd they come from?
who are the reviewers? The reviewers are actually identified by the Office of Professional Development. There are, just like we have SACS reviewers that go throughout the state, they're actually former educators that actually come. There's one gentleman that was here, Mark, from NEFECT, which is the organization from the Northeast area of the state, in order to be able to work with the schools up there. They're basically former educators that are employed now by the Department of Education.
Oh, they work for DOE.
Yes. Yes. There are a lot of protocol standards, so I did not list all of them, but what I did was I actually pulled out some ones that are specific to district, and on the left-hand side you will see the protocol standards for district that I picked, the school, and the educator. Ms. Werthaler and I attended last week a training, which will be one of 8 trainings and modules that we're actually going to be attending in order to be able to rewrite our professional development plan. So they were training us on that process. And what they had done with is they actually shared what are some of the results statewide. So what you're looking at are just some of the protocol standards listed here, and then the state mean is that next column. So as again, on our scale of 1 to 4, you can see the state mean, and then the last column is how we actually fared. So as you can see, the 4.0s, the 3.3s, that kind of gives you just a sampling of some of those. Now the standards are very specific. We get a description of each one of those, but that kind of gives you a comparison of how we did compared to the state.
On the educational, I'm thinking of the very last one there.
Yes.
The educator. Theoretically, would Skyward not, and I hate using it like it's penicillin, but I'm saying, is that not something that's probably, I would think, would change as a result of
Yes.
that component, Skyward being?
Yes, and I'm going to talk about that last one, which was our lowest score of a 2.7. When you ask about those, why do we got
Got it.
that's,
But it's still higher than the state.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'll keep that screen up there. Is that good?
What it says, under educator, use of results, what is that pertaining to? Is that statistics and that sort of stuff, or what is it pertaining to?
Let's see.
1.4.5, yes, yes.
Oh, use of results. That's data analysis. Yes, of students.
So we have 4.0 excellent and use of data analysis by the educators, by the teachers who,
Correct.
that is to.
Let me just lift out some things. These are standards that we had identified that I just thought I would share with you today. And again, I have availability to this full report. I will be more than happy to share that with you. It actually has specific comments at which we were actually either commended or suggested to improve. So 3.1.1, district needs assessment. The district, this is a comment directly from our report, the district's commended for conducting a formal needs assessment annually that is based on school level disaggregated student achievement. So we're looking at analysis of our data to be able to determine the needs for our students was recognized. 3.1.4, content standards for student outcomes. The district was commended for having it's a professional development system that places high priority on professional learning that supports implementing of the state adopted content standards. And our score there is in parentheses of a 4.0. 3.2.6 was our time and resources. We did not get a 4.0, we got a 3.0 in this one. They recognize that there are many hours used for professional development learning. What are not said is that are not actually listed on our district calendar, but are embedded in the school day, whether it be data days of pulling those teachers out during their planning periods or pulling them together for a half a day, the morning before or the morning after, or I'm sorry, the afternoon. But they did allude to less than 30 hours or more of required, and that's kind of built into that calendar. So we had actually identified with them our calendar and our professional development where they designate for, and their recommendation is to try and increase more of those days of professional development
But
days
they
within
didn't
our
count the
calendar.
other times, like you said, before school, they only counted the days that
They
were
did,
set aside.
right, they did actually allude to that, but they said in order to be able to
Yeah.
get to that, we need those hours.
And that information was passed along to the calendar committee, and I believe all 3 of the options that they're going to be bringing forth included increasing
Man.
that to the 30 hours.
Good, good.
3.3, and I appreciate that, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. 3.3.2, coaching and mentoring, many coaching or mentoring activities to ensure high fidelity classroom implementation of professional learning. None of the schools, and I apologize, that should be N-O-N-E, of the schools has a full-time instructional coach. So as the times have changed, we've actually replaced those full-time literacy coaches there.
Budget.
So that was a 3.0. The last one is 1.3.3, and this is the web resources and assistance. That was our 2.7. So the idea here is that there are web resources available to our staff in order to be able to obtain their professional development. And the extension of that is, are they then able to collaborate with one another about the meaning or the impact of that professional development? Many educators documented the availability and use of web-based follow-up assistance, coaching, or mentoring, indicated a lack of online mentoring collaboration following professional development. So those blogs or those those things. So what we basically did, now remember, I just kind of remind the board about the timeline. Last year, we actually purchased PD360, and as you know, PD360 is our online delivery of professional development. It's a 24/7 type of access. As part of the PD360, there is a component for educators to collaborate with one another so that a teacher in one school could then communicate with a teacher in another school. At that time, we had actually just started professional development with our folks around the January time period, so it wasn't as pervasive as it probably is right now. So again, at that time, it's a snapshot of our professional development. So we've actually been utilizing PD360 in order to be able to encourage that collaboration with educators.
Let me ask you, then in professional development following a course, but on the website, different groups and stuff, they're cited when they're studying something like a forest ridge, and then the teachers collaborate after seeing that this is being done, but that doesn't count, right? It's just an official course that one takes and then collaboration after that official course?
That's correct.
Okay.
I believe that's it. We shared with them so much of what we actually post online. A lot of our instructional material processes and our adoptions, we are posting a lot of the work that's done there, so that way the identity is that they can then go back and share that information back at the schools. But it's really those courses that they're actually learning. So we've talked a little bit, so Warthaler and I have discussed this. We have about, maybe looking at a technology answer to this, if there are some other programs out there that would actually kind of encourage that type of collaboration,
Well, maybe
to be able to share that.
being able to record the number of hits.
Yeah, that's true.
They're talking about PLCs, professional learning communities.
Yes.
And that's what I mean.
They're specific.
But I mean, what are they wanting for documentation? Because I think a lot of our teachers use PLCs, and I'm not sure that we don't have it available to them. So
I think it was that the professional development being ongoing, not just a one-time, but it's basically being able to comment with others about how they're actually implementing. So that's the highlight of that, and I can share that, but it was very, this was very exciting news. And if you recall, it was a good way for Gail Grimm actually did come back and was part of that excitement as far as our good results. So if you're interested in the full report, I'll share that with you. Okay, I'll turn it over to Ms. Gail Nobles. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. One more.
I don't know. This
Oh,
is
no, we have, no.
This one kind of
Yes,
goes on.
how long, they're talking about lunch, so how long?
Probably lunch first, let's do.
Okay, it's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
Okay, then it's 12:10, we'll go ahead and break for lunch and be back in an hour, please.